that concessions are not possible, that the enemy will have to be driven out from Ukraine, that the battlefield will decide how this war ends. So the rhetoric is one thing, but then the reality is another thing. For us, the reality is simple. No concessions are possible. We are confident that we will win this war, and we know that our allies deep inside understand very well that this is our position and it cannot be influenced.
We have a new British Defence Secretary, of course, as you know. Will you miss Ben Wallace? He was a famously devoted supporter of the Ukraine military effort.
Ben Wallace was indeed, a powerhouse without exaggeration when it came to supporting Ukraine, when it came to galvanizing the international coalition of free nations who are providing Ukraine with military support. Thanks to Ben Wallace, a lot of things happened which allowed Ukrainian armed forces to defend our land and people efficiently, to advance on the battlefield, to liberate places like Kharkiv, like Kherson, and to actually conduct the offensive operations which we do now. Challenger 2 tanks, the UK was the first to provide these to Ukraine. Storm Shadows, long-range missiles. Again, Ben Wallace, who is responsible for this stream in the UK, was the one who was, very supportive of this move. Our president, Mr. Zelensky, spoke about the need for F-16 for the first time when he was in the United Kingdom, and his pledge was met with a lot of understanding and support. So yes, Ben Wallace is a true friend of Ukraine, and of course he will be missed. But I would like to say one thing. Nothing is certain except death, taxes, and the unwavering support of Ukraine by the United Kingdom. Now, this is something that we are confident in, and I don't think, there is not a shadow of doubt in our minds that something will change. We have seen Grant Shapps in Kyiv just, literally a couple of days back.
Yes.
And he was walking the streets of Kyiv. He recorded a very emotional video. It is very clear that he has a very good understanding of what Ukraine is going through, of what Europe and world are going through. So we will miss Ben Wallace, but we, of course, welcome Grant Shapps to his new office, and we wish him luck.
Now, Yuriy, what then is high on the list of points that you want to make to the new Defence Secretary?
Well, look, we still are fighting this brutal, aggressive war, genocidal war against our people, against our nation. And Britain will continue to be a key player in the international coalition of free nations. So in the long term, in the mid-term and short term, like in the long term, for example, we aspire to become members of NATO alliance. And of course, Britain's support in that aspect will be instrumental. In the short term, we continue to need to train our troops, and a lot of Ukrainian soldiers have been trained by the United Kingdom efficiently, and they are now protecting our land and fending off the enemy. So there are so many other things which Britain is a part of already, and we are confident that it will continue under the leadership of Grant Shapps.
Now, let's talk for a moment about the equipment that Ukraine needs so badly. You mentioned F-16 fighters, enormously expensive, up to the moment, state-of-the-art warplanes. But I was just reading today about at the other end of the scale, the use of cardboard drones costing thousands of dollars, not tens of millions, and they've been used successfully to destroy Russian warplanes on Russian soil.
Exactly. Before the war, we as a nation, we have been so good at inventing things in different realms. In particular, in IT, right now, we are becoming the global center of military technology startups and of the drone industry. So it's a very if you like, mixed and hybrid warfare that we are fighting. On the one hand, indeed, we are expecting the F-16s, and we badly need them to protect our skies and to give our troops, at least parity on the front lines, if not advantage and air superiority. But on the other hand, of course, we understand that certain things take longer than we would like them to. So we have to be inventive and creative. And this is why we are making different types of drones, naval drones, underwater drones, and including drones from cargo.
Yeah. So just moving from the battlefield, the realities of the battlefield, to sort of high strategy, high political considerations. We spent a lot of time, as you know, talking about the American election, which is looming up, and thinking of Donald Trump. And quite apart from the story of Donald Trump, which is really quite extraordinary, of course, we hear him talking of ending the Ukraine war if he gets to the White House, he says, in a day, which would involve concessions to Russia. And meanwhile, others in America who are competing to be the nominee for the candidate for the presidency for the Republican Party are also arguing against continuing the support that we've seen from the United States. What are your thoughts when you hear that and see that?
First of all, we don't meddle into the internal affairs of our allies. Second of all, we are confident in the continued support of the United States of Ukraine. And thirdly, we understand that election process is a very interesting political affair, and a lot of things are being said. But all our allies understand very well that concessions are not possible, that the enemy will have to be driven out from Ukraine, that the battlefield will decide who, how this war ends. So the rhetoric is one thing, but then the reality is another thing. For us, the reality is simple. No concessions are possible. We are confident that we will win this war, and we know that our allies deep inside understand very well that this is our position and it cannot be influenced.
I mean, I recognise your position, and I also recognise your reluctance to stray into areas of politics in other countries, including maybe especially America. But you say you can count on American support. Clearly, that's not the case. You cannot count on American support as it is now, given that Donald Trump, for one, and there are others, do have a shot of taking the presidency.
Well, on the one hand, of course, nothing is set in stone, and neither I nor anybody else has a crystal ball to see, who will be the next president of the United States and what his agenda will be. But what I can say on a personal level, I have personally met with the representatives of the Republican Party, both here in Ukraine and on a working trip to Washington, D.C. And I haven't met even one alive Republican who would not be supportive of Ukraine. Because look, let's not forget that the Republican Party is the party of Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was the Republican leader who knew with every fiber of his body what kind of evil was presented back then by the Soviet Union, and now its ancestor Russia. So I think that, let's wait till the elections subside, all the rhetoric will calm down, and the baseline will remain the same. Everybody understands what kind of threat Russia is, not just to Ukraine, but to the US national interests as well.